It's very musical what you're playing. It just makes it easy to play. It's not in front of the beat, it's not behind the beat, it's just got a kind of dreamy lilt to it. You're a good guitar player. I think I've been on your videos, what now, 8 times?
At least.
And every time I say something about your guitar playing.
First of all, the feeling is mutual as well. When I first met you, obviously you can always play, but you can see you've been playing much more in your band. And the thing that you did at the party, at the Paul Reed Smith party, I thought that was the best I've heard you play. The Jeff Beck thing was the best I've heard you play, and also probably the most intimidating situation you've probably ever had to play in. You know, it's like.
You want to hear the story?
Yes, please.
So David Hidalgo, who I just adore the way he plays guitar, they cross-booked him, and he couldn't be at the party. The guy from Los Lobos, what a guitar player! Oh my God! There was an open slot. And I said, Bev, I want the slot. She goes, you can have it, but we're going to run over and it'll be taken from you. I said, I'll take the risk, no problem, but I don't think we're going to run over. I think I want the slot to play, because I hadn't been, I wasn't going to play. And we're at dinner 2 nights before. Myself, Greg Granger, Whitney Houston's drummer, and Jonathan Lassane, the guy who did Front of House that day. And by the way, John Mayer's assistant was out front that night. She says, it sounds so good. He did such a good job out front. We're sitting at dinner, and I said, I want to go after Jeff Beck tune. Let's do the pump. I wanted to do. I wanted to do that, and they went, let's go after the slow one. And I went, there were going to be 1,100 guitar players in the room. You don't go after because we ended as lovers in front of 1,100 guitar players. And they said, no, let's go after the slow. And I went, if I can get through the first note, if I can get through the first note, I'll be okay. And I looked at the front of house engineer. I said, you better turn me up. You better have me up when I hit the first note with the echo and the reverb, or I'm not that. No, he goes, I'll have it right. I went, oh, well, we played the tune a lot, right? Very nerve-wracking. And so we did it. I walked out, plugged in, and I went for it. What's not known is that John Mayer's tech, who was there, was Jeff Beck's tech.
Oh, wow.
And they're not really going after that one, right? And the room was like, they're not really going after that, right? I made 3 mistakes because it was so nerve-wracking, but I just stopped and it didn't sound like a mistake, so it was fine. And we got through it. And I was so pleased. I was so pleased we got through it. What fundamentally happened was that I was always a guitar maker that played guitar once in a while, and that all shifted that day. Now I'm a guitar player that makes guitars. It shifted that day in the whole room, and I really adored that moment. It's interesting you bring it up. We sold all the Charcoal Phoenixes just like that after that party. People went, whatever that thing he was playing at the party, I want one. And I still have that guitar. I brought a different one. It's here today. This is its brother. I brought its brother. But it was a very interesting experience to play the Holy Grail, the Untouchable, in front of all those guitar players. But we've been doing it for 10 years, so we had some experience with it, right? Whew! Breathe!
Well, I get asked a lot, and I love...
You were in the room,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So I get asked quite a lot. So I'm 53 years old now, and I've definitely felt in the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even less than that, I've taken my guitar playing more seriously, and I really feel like I've come on as a guitar player in the last 3 years. And people say that, and so this whole like you can't teach an old dog new tricks is obviously not the case.
No, you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah, I'm interested in. People often say, what were the moments for you? What are the things that you the light bulb moments? And I think I can probably pick 2 or 3 light bulb moments. But for you, when you really feel like you've had a breakthrough in your playing and you've managed to take it to another level, what is it about those moments?
I don't feel like there's been a breakthrough moment that's taken it to another level. Although I did feel the party was an opportunity as rare as a hen's tooth. I mean, I got a text at the end of the whole party, and it was from the house engineer. He said, "Thanks for letting me be part of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." He said, "This was an historic event." And then it hit me. But it wasn't that I felt like the guitar playing had come up a level. It was that this moment had happened. You know, the reason I got to play with John that night is his people went to him and said, "You missed it," and he goes, "I want to hear what I missed, so we'll have him sit in with me." They weren't planning on having me sit in, which I thought was. I said, "Well, you're doing a J.J. Cale tune. Can I play on that?" He said, "Sure." Look, I'm playing with the Granger brothers, and when you're in that situation, they're the support system for you playing through the PA and having the music run around the building, right? So for me, I'm not using the guitar amp as a monitor. I'm using the PA as my amp, and I'm giving them a good feed the way a singer would give a good feed to the PA, you know? And I'm not trying to play at ear-deafening volume, but you got to trust the guy or the woman or whoever it is out front mixing. Otherwise, you're dead in the water. And our rule is guitar solos, same volume as vocals. You can make that rule all day long, but it's really hard to enforce.
Are you a good listener? Well, that was I think the breakthrough moment that I can most point to was the point where I used to work out. I used to go, what's the key? So sometimes you knew what the key was, or you'd work it out, and then as soon as I knew what the key was, I'd just play scales and licks. One day, or over a period of time, I began to really go listen to the music that you're playing along to, and play something that embellishes the emotion of what it's trying to do, rather than all your best scales and licks just in the right key. And that for me was, so I'm interested, like, have you always been a good listener sort of about what's happening around you, or?
Yeah, but I was in Nashville and there was a gentleman sitting in front of me, my age, and I said, "Who are you?" And he goes, "My name's Chris." I said, "Chris Lusinger." I said, "Nice to meet you, Chris. I'm Paul." And he had a PRS in his hands. And he plays 3 perfect notes. Now, you don't hear guitar players play perfect notes very often. I mean, he literally played 3 notes and they were perfect. You know, kind of like Carlos Santana going. I mean, in Barbarella, those are perfect notes, right, that he played. And I went, huh. And then he plays 4 perfect notes. And I went, "Have I ever heard you play before?" He goes, I think so. I said, "Where?" He says, "Well, I played every note on every Garth Brooks record." And I went, whoa. I said, "Can I come back for a guitar lesson on my birthday?" He said, "Be my honor." So I fly on February 18th after that to Nashville, and I go, he doesn't give guitar lessons. And I'm in his living room, and I'm playing for him, and I was playing a whole bunch of minor chords, and I wanted him to show me piles of inversions of minor chords that normally aren't played, and I can show you what he showed me, which was staggering. Here, this is the first chord he showed me. Which has no F sharp in it. It's an F sharp minor. He showed me this. Then he showed me this.
That inversion you just played, and I don't know what the name of the chord is.
No, it's 2
I play that all the time, just because you can keep the same shape. And it's just a nice, so I don't even know what that chord is called.
I don't know what it is, we call it the love chord. We'll get into that, where you're using that chord, but he was showing me that. And then I was playing for him, he goes, "Now, Paul, you play ahead of the beat. We need to get you on the Memphis side of the beat. We need to get you on the backside. And Hendrix played on the backside, but with a lot of energy. And he puts his hand on my shoulder. We need to get you on the backside. And then my ears perked up forever about whether I was with the drummer, ahead of the drummer, or behind the drummer, or where I was in time. And I played at the Vintage Guitar Show the next year, and they said, you play it so much better. I hadn't played one different note. The only thing I had done was not play ahead of the drummer.
That's huge, though, isn't it?
Huge.
Yeah,
so when I was
huge.
playing with you, I'm very conscious and listening to you that I'm not ahead of you.
Yeah.
I think it's the secret of old records. They were playing behind the beat.
I think
they weren't sliding them on the grid. There was no grid. It was tape.
I think that's when I listened back to the jams that I had with Pete Honore. He is just in the pocket, right, and in a way that I'm not. And so he can play, you know, G to C to D back to G. It just sounds better than me playing it. And I do think that in fairness, I think probably does only come from a lot of gigging and playing with other musicians.
Well, also he has a good sense of time, right?
Yeah.
So for me, listening is all about time now, much more about time than it is about notes.
Space, maybe? Play?
No, I'm leaving a lot of holes.
Right.
When you play it in the right spot, you tend to want to, you're not trying to fill things up. You just said D, G, and C.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Beatles arpeggio with those three chords, right?
Yeah, it's a million songs.
I
right,
stole it and put it into a tune called Echoes.
Well, look.
So yes, I am listening, but I'm in a position with musicians that are so extraordinary around me. I'm the one learning as fast as I can because I'm trying to catch up.
I think it's lovely that there is a sense that there is no such... I think for a long time I really thought if I hadn't got to the level I wanted to be by the time I was 18 or 19, I'd kind of missed the boat. But I've sort of re-energized myself in the last 2 or 3 years of going, that's not necessarily the case. Anyway, look, listening is a good segue to what I kind of wanted to talk about. Listening and hearing and understanding why you need to understand what pickups do and why you might use a single coil for something, or why a narrow field might be the right choice, or why a different kind of humbucker might be a right choice. And you in the last 10 or 15 years of your life have really deep dived into these things. Yeah. So what's, you know, I mean, we haven't got 3 hours to do this, but, you know, why don't you take us back to, like, what were the original kind of pickups and like, what did they do and what did you learn when you looked at those kind of original early designs?
Well, look, when I grew up in Washington, D.C., the two guitar players that were killing it, both playing P90s. So PAFs weren't a thing. Danny Gatton was there. That was Telly pickup. When I saw Lowell George, he had a Strat, and he had put a Telly pickup in the treble position. By the way, he got really angry when he met me. And I was like, what's wrong? He goes, you get away from me, you get away from me. I said, what did I do, what did I do? He goes, every guitar I've ever loved has been stolen from me, and I'm gonna love that guitar, you get away from me. Which I thought was, and Paul Barrere very sweetly knelt down at the Warner Theater and gave me a stage pass. And I put my chin on the stage as the only person in the audience that had a stage pass and watched geniuses go at it that night. What a band. Lee, they were so good. But for me, it was P90s and Strat and Tellys. It wasn't about PAFs. And we only knew one guy that had, or a couple of guys that had old Les Pauls, you know.
Well, you know what, I might sound hugely ignorant here, but what makes a P90 different to a single coil, just mechanically? So
I'm going to get to the fact that Leo Fender proved that you can have a single coil sound like you can have a humbucking sound like a single coil. I said that wrong, but you can have a humbucking sound like a single coil. I'll get to that in a minute. A P90 is one coil, bunch of screws in one coil. In a Strat, there are magnets down through it. On a P90, the magnets are underneath it.
Right.
And there's a lot more turns on a P90 than there is in a Strat pickup. Now that coil is so big and there's so many turns that hums like a banshee. I mean, I've heard in clubs in DC where the hum was louder than the guitar. Have you ever had a bar like that in the UK where the
I think you get it worse in the US, something to do with your main cycle, isn't it?
It's got something to do with the fact that somebody accidentally took a ground and put it on the lighting system and turned it into an antenna. I mean, it's really bad. really, really bad. And if you didn't have a hum canceling guitar in those bars, you couldn't play unless you played right on the edge of distortion, which is what all these guys did. If they played one note, it was clean. If they played two notes, it would start to break up just a little bit. If they dug in, it would break up right at the beginning of the note. And so then it wasn't that much gain. This idea, all this gain and all these pedals, that didn't exist.
Yeah.
We were plugged into Marshall 50s, and it was a big day when, of all things, Music Man amps came out. They had more gain.
Yeah.
The way I think about pickups is a coil with magnets in it, that would call that a single coil. A P90, which is screws and magnets underneath, even though it's a single coil, they are referred to as P90s. Mm-hmm. And then you have a humbucking, which is two coils with one magnet in between. That's kind of the way I think about it. The thing about a Telecaster treble pickup, it's got this big steel plate on the bottom that's copper plated. I always thought it was a copper plate, but it's not. It's a steel plate with copper coating on it. And that changes the sound of the pickup. And for me, it was always about pulling those pickups out of old guitars and sticking them in guitars that I made. What's fascinating about it is I found out that, let's say there's 10,000 turns on a P90. When they made the humbucking, they just put 5,000 turns on one coil, 5,000 on the other, slid the same magnet underneath it, and they were off to the races. And I asked Ted McCarty, I said, well, what's with the humbucking? He says, well, I asked my engineer to get me something that bucked the hum. Now, what he just said was, I asked Seth Lover, who was my engineer, to get me something to get rid of the hum, but he used it, buck the hum, to get rid of it. And that's where the word humbucking came from. And I'm like, we were screaming. We couldn't believe the guy that invented the name of the pickup was sitting in front of us. And then they named P90 soap bars because they look like a piece of soap bar, right? They look like a soap bar in your guitar. So for me, that was the beginning of it. But getting the John Mayer pickups right, oh my God. There's how many companies have gone after vintage Strat pickups to try to get that sound?
All of them.
Okay, right. And it's not so easy. One time I was on the stage with John Mayer, and I had done the same turns, same wire, same magnets, same everything, and it didn't sound the same as his guitar. And I said, I need to borrow the guitar for one day, lend it to me for a day. And I threw the guitar in the back of my wife's Prius. That's a little Toyota. Do you sell Priuses here? Yeah. It's in the back of the Prius, said, don't get in a car accident. And we drove home, and the next day I took the pickup and I measured it on our machine. Never seen anything like it. Never seen the beginnings of that. It wasn't even close to, they tells you, the internet will tell you what kind of magnets, how to wind it, how to scatter wind it, what kind of wax it is, this, that, and the other. Not even in the same zip code. And that took forever to figure out. And with that SC guitar, we needed to teach them how to make those pickups, but not have it be so sensitive. And those things, there's a Rick Beato video out where they compare 4 old Strats to that guitar. I thought it hung tough. Did you think it hung tough?
I did. What is it about? So obviously on the Silver Sky, and John Mayer has a certain, probably a scooped pickup sound that's sort of synonymous with his, very, very rich bass end treble. But if we just generically looked at a single coil, how would you describe its tone and where it's perhaps different to? All
right, so this, even though this is a humbucker, which I'll get to, it's got a very the bass is there, but it's not in the way. It's not. Then no matter what note I play, there's this high ping note. Mm-hmm. If I play this note, you hear the high ping note. This note, same high ping note. Yeah. Same high ping note. Therefore, this thing's making a high ping note. Because the guitar, I'm changing notes. We call that the resonant frequency of the thing. It's the same way a Neve console is. If you stick it on 5K, you can either add the 5K or take it away, and they do it with an inductor. It's the same thing. This thing is ringing up around 10K, way up in the skies, and it's loud. There's a lot of it. And that guitar, here, let me just plug the same exact thing in. This humbucking pickup I just played is tuned to the same note as this one. Same ping note. So this is where the rubber hits the road was really cool. Leo Fender proved that you could make a humbucking sound like a single coil. In a jazz bass, you have 2 pickups in there. When they're both on, it's a humbucking. Sounds like single coil. When you have a P bass, it's 2 coils in series. Looks like 2 single coils, but it's really a humbucking. One of them's picking up 2 strings, the other one's picking up 2 strings. Sounds like a single coil. In this guitar, when you have this on and this on, which is common now, when you have this one in north and this one south and both on, it's a humbucking. Sorry, sounds like a single coil. So it was very clear to me that if we could do that in these narrow field pickups, and it worked like a charm, to the point when we came out with the NF53, the tele players in Nashville, like, not only is it not losing it up on the high string, a lot of old 53, 52 tellies, you go up to the high E and it loses it. These weren't losing it up top, and there was no noise, nada, zero.
I've got some gain over here, so let me demonstrate what you mean about the hum that is generally considered as unwanted. So if I put a higher gain pedal on, turn my tuner off. Okay, so that I've got quite a lot of gain.
So turn the volume control off. So you see everybody, it's the pickup. Go on, do it again.
So that's not one of the. That's just this pickup on its own. It's not this setting or this setting. Lots of hum, and then I switch to the 2 here, and it is a hum cancelling effect. So but of course, if I take that off, this sound, you know, is very different So if I want this sound but with no hum,
that's this.
I need this.
That's right.
Right.
And the way we did it was to get the 2 coils to resonate at exactly the frequency that this resonates at.
So you can see on here the 2 lines of slugs here. So this is still magnets, the magnets. So it's still 2 coils. Okay, let's put all that gain on. So you can see there's no discernible difference. It's definitely got the brightness and the attack of a single coil pickup, hasn't it? Do you think it's fair to say it's not identical? There would still be somebody who would go, there's a tonality of a completely single coil pickup versus one of these that just makes it marginally different, but it's in the right ballpark, or are you going for almost, you just can't tell the difference?
It's not red wine to white wine. It's Merlot to Sangiovese. It's different. It's got or Merlot to Amarone. It's got a thicker sound to it, but it's not all the way to Scotch.
Do you know what? That's a great analogy. So you're right. Red wine is the humbucker, white wine is the single coil, and what we've got here is like a 2 variants of white wine grape. I get that. That's a good analogy. I think everyone will understand that.
Carlos Santana once said to me, because this thing that I'm playing through right now sounds like white wine. Can you make it sound like red wine? Which I completely understood. But the engineers that were with me went, wow, what is he talking about? Because they didn't know how to think of it like that. Guitar players are going to use their best analogies to tell you what they're thinking. As Carlos Santana says, he goes, listen, Paul, I live in an emotional world. You live in an engineering world. We got to figure out how to communicate, which I thought was brilliant.
All the best and most successful guitar and amp designers that I've ever met just know what you mean when you go, I just need it more earthy sounding. Yeah. You know, it's like, because guitar players don't know what they really mean. They know what the search they're looking for, but they don't have the language. They don't have the technical language to say, please could you add this component and adjust this for.
I need a little more compressed and give me a little bit more 400 cycles. It's not something.
Nobody knows that, do they?
Well, some of them do, but most of them don't.
This is true. What's happening here then when you've got a humbucking pickup?
That's right.
And now I'm going into one of these positions where
those pickups are on, just like here.
So it's doing the same thing. One's north, one's south, and it's getting that.
No, with those, they're just the same. It already got rid of the noise. I don't have to get rid of the noise again.
Right, so you're, okay. So that sort of quackier sound, or however I'm
Is
doing
where
it now.
is the position of it.
So it's got nothing to do with the fact that the middle one's reverse wound on that guitar. It's just the fact that it's two pickups picking up two different
If I
sort of cycles
magnetize
across the
this
string.
pickup the other way and change the wires, it would give the exact same sound, but it would hum.
Interesting. And at what? Because in the early Fenders, the middle one isn't reverse wound, is it?
No,
so
well, you don't have to reverse wind it. All you got to do is switch the wires.
Right. I guess that's what I mean.
But in the beginning, we didn't really understand, and we would reverse wind them.
Okay.
But I don't hear a difference.
So literally revert, as in go clockwise versus anti-clockwise.
Yeah, but now we just go clockwise and switch the wires over. Look, this is the way it works. The hum is coming in.
Yeah.
The noise is coming in. If this is north and this is north, when you put both on, it's going to come out and you'll hear the noise. But if you switch this one to south and switch the wires, then the noise collides into each other between the two of them. The sound is now in phase because this one's north and this one's south, and the wires are backwards, but the noise is out of phase and it cancels it just like noise canceling headphones.
There you go. We're learning something. Okay, so of these two guitars...
But I'm sorry, but I think the fact that Leo Fender knew that jazz bass was a humbucking pickup, I mean in parallel, but a humbucking pickup, I think it's brilliant because that was the proof. That was the only proof I needed. If he could make a humbucking that sounded like a single coil, we could. And that made that a possibility.
It's funny that, isn't it? That it wasn't until much later in Leo Fender's life that he started to play with that sort of like the P-bass concept of, you know, a single coil for these three and then a single coil for... It wasn't until the 80s that he started messing around on the G&L stuff. But I think you're right. People don't give Leo Fender the credit he deserves for his pickup understanding and knowledge.
Look, what happened at Gibson was magic. It's the beginning of a whole industry.
Yeah.
What happened at Fender was magic, the beginning of a whole industry. What I needed to do was figure out what they were thinking, why they were thinking it, and trying to go backwards. Now, I had the ability to interview Ted McCarty. He told me what the covers were made out of. He told me the history of the covers. He told me all that. And now, you know, we've discovered that there were many, many, many cover molds out of different materials over time because Gibson at the time couldn't get enough covers, so they were having a lot of companies making them, and every company would engineer them differently. Lee, I'm pretty certain that they didn't order Alnico 2, Alnico 3, Alnico 4, Alnico 5. They ordered magnetic material and took whatever they had.
So you think we've discovered that at a later date?
Well, we were trying to reverse engineer it. Was that, which one were they using at the time? You know, all that. I think it was brilliant because they were using their ears and their musicality, and the artists were giving them feedback of what they liked and what they didn't like. The very first humbucking had pole pieces in it. It didn't have screws and slugs, right? They were trying, when they got it to the right place, they left it and went to market. But, you know, the first Les Pauls had this reverse bridge thing, then they go to the McCarty bridge with the wraparound tailpiece, and then they go to the Tune-o-matic, and now they've got P90s, and they want to get rid of the hums, and they make the humbuckers, and then people finally want to see the curly maple on the top, so they take that off. They tell us the necks are too big, so they make the thin neck, and then Les Pauls are too heavy. Let's just make it an SG. Now it doesn't weigh too much anymore. I'll give you a story that's not well known. Ted McCarty said, we went to our artist meeting in New York every year, and one year they said, we want a vibrato that moves in the motion of our hand. Not the way the Fender one goes up and down, but since we're strumming, that's the way we want it. So we invented the sideways vibrola. His next comment was very revealing. Oh, that was a mistake. In other words, it didn't go well in the marketplace. Sideways vibrolas, while we do repros of them, but you don't know what the person running the company thought. That was a mistake. It's fascinating. And then the next one went up and down. Remember, it was bending a piece of metal on the SGs?
The Maestro
right?
ones, yeah.
So to me, all that history is important. Look, if you want to know what these people at Fender thought, whatever they thought on that day is in that guitar. So a 56 Strat, they knew that the side dots shouldn't be all over the place, and they finally made a jig to drill the side dot holes. But early on, they were hand done and they were in different positions, right? So they had figured out, well, maybe it would be better if we engineered a jig, right? But there were little changes in the guitars every year. And you know, vintage guys are crazy about these changes, which is fine with me. I don't really have a problem. What I want to know, though, is what did these people who invented this think? We got into a double amplifier recently and trying to figure out what he thought. You could make the identical circuit. It didn't sound close. So he understood something everybody else didn't understand. Finally, we got a handle on what that was. Fascinating. Finally got a handle on what was going on between 58 humbuckers and 59 humbuckers, which sound different. And why do they sound different? We finally figured it out. We started unwinding them a turn at a time. Now, you don't take a $5,000 pickup and unwind it a turn at a time and throw the wire away. But I wanted to be able to have this interview with you, or this discussion with you, and be able to talk in an educated way about it. And if I'm sitting here knowing exactly how many turns are on a 59 pickup and exactly on a 58 and a 57, and by the way, I'm certain they were putting different turns on different models. I don't think the archtops had anywhere the turns that the Les Pauls had.
How? I mean,
it does make sense, right?
I guess if they knew that more turns equals more output, then I guess
more turns equals louder and less bright.
Right. So that you would want. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, you'd have a view, wouldn't you, as to what you were aiming for, an arch top versus a solid body, and you would wind it accordingly. But how much of that?
Okay, I'm going to get assassinated.
I don't think you are, because
the internet for saying I know how many turns are on 59 or 58. And by the way, you can write me 100 times. I'm not going to tell you. You unwind it yourself.
No. I'm just. I always think it's fascinating going back to that sort of halcyon era of the sort of 50s and 60s where so much innovation was coming out.
Yeah.
How much of it was happy accident? You know, material availability, the way the wind was blowing on a certain day versus really like intentional engineering to achieve something. Because I think nowadays everybody unpicks it to the point where they're going, yeah, it was all intentional engineering, and I'm just not convinced. I think some of it was just what material was available. Just
I believe they were ordering magnetic material. That would have been interesting, but they were adjusting turns and other stuff to adjust for it. I think it's a combination of all of it, because these pieces of gear sometimes are magic. We were very interested in it. I bought a 1958 Les Paul Special with the limed yellow guitar. I was noticing when I was playing up high that some of the notes were choking out, Lee, and I thought, what the hell? I leveled the frets, they'd never been leveled. I had bought a guitar that had never been played, and the frets weren't level. I had to level the frets, and I realized every old guitar I ever had been leveled by a quality repairman. So I had never seen one that hadn't been touched. Fascinating, absolutely jaw-dropping. We put the PAFs, I bought a pair of 59 PAFs, we dropped them in the Special, and we dropped an original Tune-o-matic on the Special, and don't do it, you're gonna ruin the finish value, don't do it. Next day they called and said, can I hear it? Because they never made a Special with humbucking instead of Tune-o-matic.
Right.
Which would have been exactly an old Les Paul, except without the curly maple top, right? I don't know, I find the whole thing fascinating. When we did that Beato video, there are 4 old Strats in the room, and you can clearly hear the differences between them. They weren't all exactly the same. And they were gonna pick whatever one they picked. And, you know, I had spent so much time with my team listening to these old guitars and listening to the new guitars, it didn't scare me. That model got shot out with a 53 Esquire at an event in America recently, and the treble pickup held up. Not well, unbelievably well. You don't have a Telly here, do you?
For sure.
You have an old one? Or you have a
we'll
new
have some
one?
reissues of old ones.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Let me explain that.
Okay.
That's not fair in a way. I would rather compare this to what my teachers did than to what the other companies are doing. But a Telecaster pickup, I mean, these guys that play them all the time know the high E string very often goes da-da-da-da-da, E. You know, you see on the Eric Johnson model, he's adjusted the saddle on a EJ Strat to fix that problem. Have you seen that?
No, it's in because you make the string higher or make the string lower?
No, he made the saddle out of a different material,
a
little piece of coating on it, and it worked. His solution worked. I think these people at Fender or Gibson, if they had problems with their artists, would have made adjustments. I actually think it was brilliant. The thing that's genius is Leo Fender and Ted McCarty didn't play guitar. They were interviewing people. Wow. Do you want to explain that one to me?
The Leo, I mean, I read Leo's biography, and it's just, you know, the guy's got, he lost sight in one eye, had his head in the back of an amplifier in the 50s trying to fix it. It's gone open circuit, and he's literally gone deaf at that point.
Yeah.
And he's still through, I don't know. I think you're right. I think his genius was understanding what musicians wanted.
They were telling him what he wanted, and he was giving them.
And he could interpret that.
That was unbelievable. Same thing with Ed McCarty.
Yeah. Yeah, I've not read anything. Has he got a biography that's worth a read? I'm just trying. Someone must have written one recently.
I can tell you another story. I said, Ted, why were the early Les Pauls gold tops? Well, you know, we knew Leo didn't have a carving machine, so if we made it, we had figured out that putting a maple top on a mahogany body sounded better than all mahogany, so we were trying to hide the maple top from him. And I looked at him, I said, Ted, inside the horn where the binding goes up, you can see the maple cap. He goes, shut up. One day we were sitting in a bar in Maui, in a restaurant in Maui. He goes, I saw a bar in the shape of a failure today. So Ted, what are you talking about? And I kept interviewing him. I realized he had been in a Hard Rock Cafe. The bar was a flying V, and he saw it as a failure because they could only build 40 of them, and they never got a reorder. And it was for him a complete failure. He liked the electric Spanish guitar, which is the ES 335 is a price, 330 is a price, you know, all those prices, right? He was like, it was a failure. I said, why did you do the Explorer and the Flying V? He says, Leo was telling us we were a bunch of old fogies, couldn't do anything new, wanted to shut him up. I said, did it work? He said, it worked great.
Oh man, if you had a time machine, is that where you're going back to? Never mind go see the dinosaurs or anything like that. Is it just take me back to 1950 and let me be around that for 10 years? Or
I would have wanted to see the dinosaurs. I would have wanted to see. I go to these places in the Bahamas that are the same way as they were a million years ago, and I adore seeing these places. I went to Stonehenge a couple times ago when I was here, and it had the oldest feeling. I mean, I like it the way it was a long time ago. I enjoy that. If I had a moment to go back to, it would probably have been standing with Einstein when he did the thing of the light coming around the eclipse, and they saw time, space bend the light around, and they knew they were right because he was, you know, they thought he was a little bit of a lunatic. But to that moment where he proved that time, space, warped light. Can you imagine being standing there when you're in Australia filming it, and all of a sudden there's not world news, you don't get to tweet it, but on the boat back they knew? I mean, can you imagine dinner that night? Can you imagine standing on the stage when Hendrix played the Star Spangled Banner to an empty muddy field? If there's a few moments, wouldn't you have wanted to be there? Of course I'd want to be in a time machine, but I'd be very specific about which one, where it was. I've never met my grandfather. He died before I was born. I would die to go back and meet him. He was supposed to have been a spectacular man. I don't get to meet him. A time machine? I don't want to go forward. The shit coming? That's fine. Let that be. I want to go back and see a few things. You know, to see my grandmother on the track team in Texas, I would have been, seeing her as a young woman, I never got to see that, you know. I remember what it was like when my kids were born. I remember all that. That's fine. The thing about kids being born is the spectacular thing. There were 4 people in a room. Me, my wife, a nurse, and a doctor. Doors closed. 5 minutes later, 5 people in a room, nobody came in the door. I thought that was spectacular. There was another soul in the room. I thought that was really cool. But I don't need to go back and see that one. What moment do you want to go back and see?
God. I do love these conversations with you and that's why I think it was so, you are such an interesting person to be with and so honest about how you feel about things.
You asked me.
I know. I think some of the things that I am super envious of the generation that came before me. So I'm talking about my father's generation. Yeah. They witnessed 20, 25 years worth of new music that I'm not sure in my generation like when Elvis Presley did his thing, or the first Beatles thing, or the first time Hendrix did his thing, or the first time Zeppelin or Sabbath.
During that. You want to know what it was like?
I just don't know that in my lifetime I mean, I've seen some new music. I mean, maybe rap was new, I guess, rave, dark, but nothing that I really liked. And in guitar music, I just feel like, wouldn't that have been unbelievable to see?
When the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan,
yeah,
the women were screaming, losing their noodles to watch Little Richard sing Ready Teddy on TV and the timbre of his voice coming out. Watch Elvis. When he did Heartbreak Hotel on the Jack Parr show, the whole world came unglued. They'd never seen anything like it. It was all big bands, and now you had 3 people.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they went from 25 people to 3. I was around when Hendrix came out. My brother came to me and he goes, these guys are big in England. They're going to be huge here. And he hands me a record with cellophane on it of a black guy with a fro and 2 white guys with fros, 2 eyes on his shirt, and my brother's telling me this is going to be a big deal. My brother goes out to the store. I took the cellophane off and put the record on. By the time I got to Are You Experienced, I was not the same.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, well, there are people alive that can take you back in time and tell you the story about what happened. But to stand with the dinosaurs, that just...
that would be cool as well. That'd be the next trip. I go from 1964, then maybe back to 7 million billion years before.
What happened in England and then coming to America?
Yeah.
And what happened in America going to England? I mean, the Beatles are another name for the Crickets. I mean, both names are terrible. But they're such good bands, everybody's like an icon.
My mum tells the story of seeing Cliff Richard in a local venue, like 1,500 cap venue in Guildford.
Right.
And this would have been early 60s. And again, just cannot hear anything coming from the stage because there's 1,500 young women in that audience. Screaming. I mean, maybe the same thing happens at a One Direction concert nowadays, but I just feel it was like it had never happened before. You did not go to see the Glenn Miller Band and scream at the top of your voice.
No, you didn't.
It's like, this was just new and exciting.
Were acknowledging something brand new and really powerful is happening. And I'm gonna get shot for saying the Beatles is a bad name, but the band was so good.
Good band.
The band was, and John Lennon got a whiff of it at the end. He goes, "We're quite the combo, aren't we?" I mean, the stories that you hear that they would go to Paul or John's house to write a tune every morning, and one day they couldn't come up with a tune, and they were like, "We can't come up with a tune," and it says "Good Day Sunshine" on the TV. Oh, that's it. We're done. I don't know if it's true. But it could have been true.
Well, there's a lot of evidence in that Beatles documentary where you just see the bit where McCartney is just riffing and all of a sudden sort of Get Back starts coming, and you are literally seeing genius just happen in front of your eyes. It's like...
There's a video of him recording Blackbird.
Right.
It's stunning. It's absolutely stunning.
Could we be any more stereotypical 2 old men talking about how music was better? Should we talk about pickups?
I don't know that it was better. When James Brown died, they gave a woman the nod. Christina Aguilera came up out of the stage singing "It's a Man's World," and the whole world was like, did you see Lady Gaga sing I Wish to Stevie Wonder at the special?
No, but she's amazing.
Stunning.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure it's old versus new. I think it's those moments that we miss because we were too young. I think there's some extraordinary stuff going on right now. I adore music, and sometimes it's not a band playing, sometimes it's a concert and you're like, whoa. I saw John Mayer at Madison Square Garden with a single acoustic guitar. It sounded like a whole band. That's now. It's morphing, it's moving. You get to see it moving. You got gifted musicians in here every day, and you're going to tell me they can't touch the old? I don't buy it. Come on.
I know. I 1,000,000% agree with you. I'm being facetious when I say that. I know that there's tons of great music now, and and all the time you see my kids are a perfect example. They're 7 and 11.
Yeah. What do they love?
They love what they hear on mainstream radio.
Yeah.
But they dance. It's nothing like they put music on and they dance, and you can see they're just enjoying all the same things, and that the music that they will love will be what for the rest of their life will inevitably be what they listen to for the next 10, 12 years. It's those formative years, and I just know that, you know, I'm harking back to my teenage years, and I'm sure you hark back to your teenage years. You're very impressionable, I think.
Something magic about seeing new stuff develop in front of your eyes. As another moment, I would have loved to seen Tesla doing those things where he was doing the demonstration with the static electricity.
Yeah, you're talking about the original Mr. Tesla as well, aren't you?
Huh?
Alexander? Nikolai. That's right.
The ones where it changed physics and engineering and music as we know it. There's been a lot of extraordinary music come out of a lot of places. Everybody, it's got to be American guitars, American. I'm sorry, the great violins weren't made in America. You know, the Italians had that one, and the Spanish guitars that Antonio Torres made. I'm sorry, they were made in Spain, right? When I come to Europe, I feel like I'm in the home of the guitars. I actually got to see a Stradivarius guitar that he made. He made 4 of them.
Really?
Had a laminated ebony and ivory neck.
This was what, like a regular 25-inch scale acoustic style guitar by
No, they had double strings like a mandolin, and they were a gut.
Right, okay.
And it had a beautifully carved rosette in the middle of the sound hole. But it was the beginning of guitar.
So more like a lute or something like that.
Well, it wasn't a lute, but in that, but it was the beginning. I actually got to hold some Stradivarius violins at the Smithsonian. Mm-hmm. And there were 2 experiences that I had that were wild. One, they did one thing that was remarkable. The harder you hit it, the louder it got. You just kept hitting it, it get louder and louder and louder and louder. You hit even harder, it get louder. Whereas a lot of times an acoustic guitar gives up at some point. This thing just kept getting louder and louder and louder, which I thought was really cool. And then I turned the 2 of them over, and they were made out of the same tree. And Jim Weaver, who was the curator at the Smithsonian, I said, "Look, Jim, they're made out of the same tree." He goes, "No way." I said, "Jim, they're made out of the same tree." He goes, "No way." And I lined up the curls, and I pushed it in his face. And he goes, "Ah!" He could see that it was out of the same tree, right? Which was not common knowledge, but I think he was buying wood the same way we buy wood. I actually think that if Stradivarius was alive today, he would be going nuts over all these colors. I'm sorry, you got me on a soapbox. The Stradivarius thing makes me crazy. The reason Stradivarius violins sound good is because of the paint. How many of your times you heard that?
I'm not a bit. No, you go.
Okay, but you've kind of heard what I'm talking about. The reason they sound good is because of the salt in the wood. The reason they sound good. Nobody ever says the reason they sounded good because the old man knew what he was doing. He didn't have an amplifier. He had an air cavity that he needed to resonate at an extraordinary volume. You hit the string, and you want a sound to come erupting out of this physics converter, right? This hollow device that's turning force into sound. When you see a Zach Perlman, the great violinist, interviewed about why does he play a Stradivarius, he says, "When I play pianissimo, really quiet, and there's no microphone, they can hear everything I did in the back corner of the hall, and with other violins, they can't hear everything I played." That's because the amount of high end and volume coming out of these things is extraordinary. He made a better physics converter, and he never got to hear it because they were gut strings at the time. The French changed all the necks, changed the neck angles and the bass bars so they could handle the strings. How genius is that? To know what's coming before it was? I'm sorry, that's like wild stuff. But that's like Ted and Leo didn't know Hendrix was coming. They had no idea. The original Marshall catalog, the owner's manual said, turn it up till it distorts and then turn it down a number. That didn't last long. I'm sorry, I'm having fun with you.
Honestly,
I feel like I'm attacking you. I don't want to attack you.
No, I don't feel like that at all. I'm going to just bring it back to talking about pickups, which is almost disappointing, really, because I could talk this all day. But
it's the hardest thing I ever did.
What, the pickup thing?
Oh God, yes.
So we've talked to single coils,
yeah,
and the vibe and the tonality and how you can get a single coil sounding guitar and not have the hum if you don't want it.
That's right.
But let's talk about humbuckers. So we're going to get. Could you put that on this? Do you have a spare stand, or are you just behind you?
You know, I made my living from guitar stands. Every time anybody put a guitar on a stand, they'd knock it over, and I'd had to glue the headstock back on. I hate guitar stands. Look like reasons to repair guitars to me, but that's.
So who invents humbuckers? We're talking Seth Lover. We generally consider he's the inventor of the humbucker, right? Under Ted McCarty's sort of tutelage.
As we think of it.
Right.
Something to buck the hum. 2 coils, which has been used in transformer design forever. Put one out of phase with the other, and the noise goes away.
There's copper winding around this one, copper winding around this one, and a magnet. Where do you say? In between. So these poles that we see here are just they're not magnetized.
They are magnetized.
They are as well.
One side of the magnet gives the screws north, and the other side of the magnet gives the other screws south.
And that's how we get
it has to be backwards.
Right.
That's correct.
Now,
a P90 is one of those coils with two magnets.
Now there are many, I think again a little bit like the single coil thing. There are obviously loud humbuckers and softer sounding humbuckers, and people play with the tonality.
Yeah.
But where have you gone with? So all your original guitars were humbucker loaded. So I'm guessing that's your sort of, that's where you've had the most heritage.
Well, I had to, because with a P90, the hum was as loud as the guitar in some places, and with all this gain, it wasn't going to work. But I had a love for those big single coils.
So tell us about the 8515, which is in the bulk of, that's probably in the more PRSs than not. But then also about on the 2408, how the humbucker is different, and again what you were trying to achieve with that.
All right. When you change the magnet type, the note and the power of the pickup changes. When you change the amount of turns, the note pretty much changes. So, the note would be da 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 da, up and down note, right? So when we make these pickups, we are trying to give it a musical note and the right amount of power to drive your pedal board. This is a control device for now pedal boards and amplifiers, right? And when you name all these pickups, whether it be McCarty 3s or DMOs or 8515s or whatever it is, we were playing with those parameters. What kind of magnet, how strong's the magnet, how many turns, what's the coating, what's the winding scheme, what's the waxing scheme, what are the cables, did we use a 250K pot or a 400K pot or a 500K pot? We all know that if we could put a 500K pot in a Strat, it's much brighter. When we put a 250 in it, calms some of the high end down. And so we were trying to figure all that out. And so all these different models are just tuned to different musical notes. Like different singers all have different resonance in their throat. George Michael's resonant note is different than Paul Rodgers' resonant note. It's not that George Michael was the wrong note or Paul was the right note or the other way around. By the way, when George Michael sang with Queen, oh my God. That at Wembley, did you see that video? That was staggering.
Yeah.
And he was quoted saying it was the greatest musical moment of his life. That's
the Freddie Mercury tribute gig, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They did. That's unbelievable.
Unbelievable. But the resonant note of George Michael's voice is different than Paul
I'll give you a time
Rodgers'
machine
voice.
moment I would go back to. I was there, but I would like to go back to it. I was at Wembley, 1986, Queen, their big post-Live Aid comeback tour type thing.
You were there.
My
what
dad
was the
took me.
feeling in the room? What was the feeling in the stadium?
I was 14, and my dad, owning a music shop, pulled some favours and got us some tickets, not backstage, but good seats, good seats. And I can, to this day, remember the opening. The stage fills with dry ice. It's got this kind of. Do you remember the
Was it
start?
During the day or at night?
It starts. It's in the summer, so it's still light outside at say 7:30, whatever. Then it gets dark. The beginning is One Vision. So if the beginning of that song is this kind of slightly crazy backwards playing music. It's like that. And anyway, it's sort of building, and then this kind of hole in the middle of the dry ice appears, and Freddie Mercury just walks through with the white trousers and the yellow jacket, and the down, 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 and I'm literally, it just blew my mind. I can feel myself literally being emotional about it now, but it was like, that was a gig. And the whole, we were on the sides, so you could see the people who were standing on the field, and the We Will Rock You thing. It's just like, it's like unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Whatever 80,000 people all doing the "We Will Rock You" clap stump things. Just
Well, those are great moments
Yeah.
in human history.
yeah.
Do you know they rehearsed for Live Aid? Do you know that? Do you know the story about Live Aid?
Well, I've seen loads of documentaries, but go on.
The other bands were like, we're getting outplayed. Oh my God, Queen. And they ran out to watch because Queen was outplaying everybody. They'd taken the gig seriously. It wasn't just a gig to play for. They thought it was going to be a world stage, and they were right.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable what they did.
That's their, because I guess I was too young at the time to really remember Queen before then, but I hadn't realised how, that pre-Live Aid, they were becoming like a novelty thing. The press didn't really like them. The music hadn't been that. This was their, we're back and we're going to kill it.
Yeah.
And they just destroyed everybody. It was amazing.
I was around the band. It's not as it is in the movie.
Right.
The movie's right, but these were powerful adult males on a mission. These were not young, nice guys.
Right.
These were powerful, knew what they were doing. Front of house guy was the best guy in the world, and they were there to murder it. And they were taking no prisoners. And I'm telling you, they knew exactly what they were doing. And I saw Freddie from about 15 feet away, and he just was asked a question. He went, nope. He was running that band with an iron fist. And I'll tell you what, all of them, Brian, Roger, all of them, they were ridiculous. They were 4 people making a ridiculous amount of noise, and the drummer was playing 16-bar loops. He was playing loops without a loop. The guy was brilliant, genius level. This stuff was ridiculously intelligent, gifted people going at it, and you got to see it.
Yeah.
Well, you just took me in a time machine back.
That was
I got
good
to see
gig.
him. I got to see him with Thin Lizzy opening for him.
Oh, okay. So you're going back.
Gary
before.
Moore was playing guitar. OMG. They were fantastic. It was a real concert. It wasn't just a gig band playing. This was a like moment to never forget kind of stuff. That's why Queen ended up being beloved. They were so good.
Yeah. You would pray to write one Queen song, wouldn't you? And then they wrote like 50 of them or 20, just like some of those, they're just so anthemic, but oh man. Anyway, look, okay, so come on.
Did we do good today?
It's great. I still need to get to the end of the, so what is the difference with the pickups in a 2408 versus?
I told you, different magnets, different winding schemes to give it a different note. Like George Michael has a different note than Paul Rogers. I was using that as an example. It's not that either one's bad, one's good. The LTs even have a higher note.
Okay.
So the DMOs are wide open. They're more spread out in frequency.
Is there a sense that if I'm using the coil tap feature on an 8515 versus on the 2408, that one you feel is
more musical than the other?
Well, just a closer reproduction of a single coil sound, or?
I don't know. I like the pull thing, but that does it to both of them. I like having individual control over it. Look, there's a guitar here that I brought. If you average the blur of all the single coils and all the humbuckers, this would be the average of the blur. This would be right in the middle of all of it.
Okay.
That is the courage of a humbucker, but the high end of a single coil because it's tuned to more of a single coil. It's actually tuned to a tele treble pickup note. Can you hear that? All right, give me a telly. Just give me one. Let's just do it.
Let's
just break every rule. Can you hear it's almost the same tune note, but without all the low end and low mids? Now these, they're really, really weak because this cover is so thick, it's taking all the string sound away too. It's not just taking noise away, it's taking string sound away. But this is... So you can hear that it's tuned. I didn't intend it to sound like a Tele. I intended it to have the clarity that treble pickup has, and it just ended up in around the same range.
And what do you call the pickup that's in that guitar?
These are called TCIs, which is
right.
tuned capacitance and inductance. We're tuning it to a note. The whistle note is about the same as the whistle note in that guitar in that treble pickup.
And there is an SE model, I think, with the TCI pickups in it, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. So so if you want full bore humbucker for sort of, I suppose, like as a rock guitar or whatever, you want to get a 2408 or a custom 24.
Well, let's listen to this tune note. The note is slightly lower, slightly more
mid-range,
but a little teeny bit, but it's got a little more of it. So the note's lower in frequency, but higher in amplitude. Mm-hmm. You turn the EQ up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, you definitely
So
can.
To me, I'm listening to them for tuned notes. Look, I know you're trying to center it for your customers that, what do you get from an 8515? What do you get from a TCI? What do you get? You're gonna have to try them. The tune note doesn't change from the videos. So when you see a video, this video, you're going to be able to hear the tune note. If you had Paul Rodgers sitting here singing and George Michael here singing, you could easily hear the difference in the resonance of their voices in a tune note, right?
Yep.
Do you sing?
No. Well, I don't know. If truth be told, it's like I used to sing when I was in my teens. I had a band and I sung in the band, and then I sing in the shower and in the car now, and I don't think I'm brave enough to do it in front of a microphone. But maybe I will one day again.
So ask me the same question.
Do you sing?
Exactly the same answer. I used to sing. I don't sing anymore. Derek St. Holmes was in my band.
Cool.
He sang so well, I just stopped. One time I actually got to sing to Paul Rodgers, we were in Frankfurt together and I sang to him, and he didn't think it was bad. I mean, actually at one point was doing okay. It was more of a character voice than it was a vocalist voice where they could sing anything, I'm sorry, Paul Rodgers ended up in Queen for a while,
He did.
I'm sorry, the man can sing.
Yeah. I think he's relatively local to here as well. I've seen him in our town centre just doing some shopping and stuff. But anyway, look, man.
What, another English musician.
Superstar.
I saw him at Royal Albert Hall singing Be My Friend. Baby, baby, be my friend.
What a venue.
Baby, baby, be my friend. I mean, what a singer. Oh my God. Paul can sing. We're playing the Steeler in my band now. Howard Leese was at the party and they learned. The band had to learn the Steeler for Howard Leese to sit in with the band, and we just kept playing it. I mean, do you have a love for old Free in your heart? Do you like that old music?
I can remember, at 10 years old, going through my dad's record collection and Free at Last and Led Zeppelin 2 and all the, what was the other stuff? Free, I particularly remember really loving just the laid-back vibe of it all. That was my introduction to just all the music that I'd obviously missed in the 60s and the 70s. So a lot of he's a big Police fan, big Steely Dan fan.
Well, Police were the Beatles of the 80s.
Yeah, that was unbelievable.
Have you seen Becoming Led Zeppelin, the movie?
No. Oh no, I want to see that. I haven't seen it yet. Relatively recently
it's
released,
mind-boggling to watch them become what we know as Led Zeppelin. He went to the record company executive and signed a record deal as long as they only made records, they wouldn't do singles, and they had complete control of their music. Under those circumstances, he would sign a record deal. And Led Zeppelin 2 was the next record.
Yeah.
Right? He already had Led Zeppelin 1 in the can.
I
highly recommend that you watch Becoming Led Zeppelin. I was stunned. The Queen movie actually was very informative. I didn't know how they recorded, Bohemian Rhapsody. I was fascinated. There were SM7s on the amplifiers that Brian May was using in the movie. I'm like, I learned something now. I think the band held the people making the movie accountable that it'd be accurate. I think they actually did that. And when they're done well, because I think you're right. I think if you get the artists involved and they've done well,
And I'm sure there's an element of, you know, drama added just to make it more cinematic. But they are really, the Elton John one was another good
Rocket Man,
movie.
did you like that?
I like that. Just, you know, I think
it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I don't know how much, but it was a good film. It's a good film. I must see the Zeppelin one though. That you're right. I saw that come out at the cinema and I thought I want to see that, and I forgot. Look, Paul, it's been a pleasure.
How can I just want to keep coming back here. Maybe I should just move to England.
Well, a lot of Americans are at the moment.
I don't think my wife would like that very much. You guys have been unbelievable supporters of our stuff, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate Lee and your entire team. And Paul was lovely today. Thank you very much.
No, honestly, it's a pleasure. I kind of feel like you are the closest thing anybody nowadays is ever going to meet, get to meet a Leo Fender or a Ted McCarthy or a Seth Lover. You know, it's like,
I better die soon, man.
No. You know, but honestly, it is a joy, and I hope people just appreciate how lucky they are that you'll sit in front of a camera and dive into some of these topics.
I could have done it the other way. I could have said, I'm not doing any interviews. We're just going to make guitars, and it would have been more like John Bonham, which in the movie Becoming Led Zeppelin, he didn't give hardly any interviews. But his interview was him playing. Oh my God.
I love that. I listened to a clip of Ginger Baker talking about John Bonham and Keith Moon. It's hilarious because Ginger Baker just doesn't hold back about how much better he thinks he is than everyone else.
Better than those two?
The general public are so dumb. Bonham had technique, but he couldn't swing a sack of shit.
You have to find it, because yes, it is. That's what he thinks. But he's sort of better just because he feels the type of music he plays is a sort of a superior kind of intellect of music. Not that he's necessary, not that they're bad drummers, but it's just
Sounds like George Harrison telling John Bonham that Led Zeppelin doesn't know how to write a ballad, so Jimmy Page writes the Rain song.
Oh yeah, of course.
He shoves it down his throat. Have you ever learned the tune? It's stunning.
Jimmy Page is another just genius. Come on, right. Say goodbye, Paul.
Are we good? Goodbye,
Yeah.
Paul. See you later. Well done.
Bye, everyone. Right, perfect.
That was fun.
That was great.